Martha, Shandy, and Jeanie. How are you going?
We're great.
Good. How
How are
are you?
you?
We're great. Hi, Grant. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
very
having
good, very
us.
good. I've got you all here together because you're part of the Outdoor Photo Alliance, and I want to talk a little bit about that later. But why don't we just go through each of you and give us a quick introduction as to who you are? So, do you want to start, Martha, or Shandy, or
Sure.
Jeanie?
Yeah. My name is Martha. I'm a landscape and nature and sometimes wildlife photographer. I live in Colorado and I was born in Mexico City, so I have like an accent. But yeah, it's just landscape, wildlife, nature photographer.
Fantastic.
Go ahead, Shanda.
Hi, I'm Shanda Akin and I'm from Durango, Colorado. I primarily photograph landscapes and nature, but I will dip my toes a little bit into a variety of some other things. I've been doing it more seriously for about the last 3 years, but I've had a love of photography for a really long time. I was in the Air Force for 25 years, and so that's really where I picked up photography and kept my camera with me. Then I retired and got to come back here to Durango and pursuing a degree in photography at the Academy of Art University. It's a Master's of Arts degree.
Okay.
Yeah, trying to get a little bit into more creativity in my own style. And yeah.
Nice, nice. How about
And I'm Jeanie Sumrall-Ajero, and I live outside of Fort Collins, Colorado. We are all Colorado people, and that's one of the reasons we got together for the Outdoor Photo Alliance. But I I do photography for the love of it. I
Mhm.
started seriously looking at it got into it in about 2016. And yeah, I would say that was a renaissance for me. I had burned out of a job and I was looking for something to get me out of the burnout, and photography was it. I love nature photography of pretty much all kinds. I really love my local landscape and I focus a lot on that. And I'm a volunteer photographer for our county natural resources.
Cool.
So taking pictures of the local area to help promote good stewardship and just the beauty that we have around us.
Fantastic, fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about the Outdoor Photo Alliance. What is it? Who's it for? Why did you start it?
Go ahead.
We
Shanda
actually,
is our fearless leader.
Okay.
okay. We, it stemmed from, okay. So basically, the Outdoor Photo Alliance was founded to empower connection and growth among those with an affinity for outdoor photography. Any kind of person, any kind of photography that's outdoor landscapes, nature, wildlife, et cetera, et cetera. So it covers a whole gambit. And we wanted to just make a space that we can help lift each other as photographers up. It really helps us and other photographers if we're working together, recognizing each other, sharing the incredible things that other photographers are doing. It just shows us that we're really a whole community and a combined, connected community.
Cool.
And we decided conferences was a big piece of that because ourselves, Jeannie, Martha and I met at a conference, and we met another friend of ours that met her at dinner before the conference, actually, Bree Stockwell.
Uh-huh.
And then she and Jeannie had connected through social media, and it ended up all that six of us got together and went photographing in White Sands.
Okay.
And it was such a wonderful experience to finally be able to connect with female photographers that we wanted to provide an opportunity for other female
Mhm.
photographers. As females, we chose this one first because as females, there's actually about 50-50 as far as photography jobs, the
Hmm.
female male split. So there's about 50% of females actually doing photography jobs, but a majority of those are portrait photographers. So there's a very small amount that are actually doing landscapes. I don't know the exact numbers. We're guessing maybe 20% or
Hmm.
less. That might be a high estimate. So the problem is we don't have a lot of people to connect with, women to connect with, those to ask about advice or, hey,
Sure.
can you review my portfolio or just meet up together and go shoot, whatever that looks like.
Mhm.
And so we wanted to provide an opportunity to help make that happen for other female photographers.
Okay, fantastic.
What what Shanda was referring to, I don't think she kind of mentioned that, but it's like what we're focusing first is a photography conference in the winter in Estes Park, Colorado.
Okay, sounds amazing. The impetus to actually start it, where did that come from? Was it just a discussion that you had, or was there something driving that discussion in behind it?
Yeah.
It was the reason I called Shanda our fearless leader is that Shanda texted both Martha and I after we had our White Sands trip, and she says, "Hey, I came up with this idea. What do you think?" And we were both like, "Yeah, that sounds awesome. We're in." And that's all
I
it
got him
took,
hooked
really.
before I told him what it really meant.
Yeah.
Before I really knew how much work was involved.
And in terms of the work that's involved, what sort of things are you actually having to do now that you set up this alliance?
So we started with this. So we did a survey before we even started anything to ask photographers, like if there was going to be a conference, what would they want to focus it on, and what would they want to get out of it? And
Sure.
so we had a list of questions, and a lot of people answered. So we gathered that data, and one of the things that we found out is that there wasn't an event like this at all. There's like a photography conference in Canada. And there are other conferences that focus more in like portrait and wedding photography, but nothing about nature and landscape.
Yeah.
So we did a research, and then once we started, we created the alliance. So we made everything legal. We had contracts and things, and then we started working on venues. We went to research the area where we were gonna have the conference. We researched venues. We started talking to sponsors, but all this has been new to us. So we've been learning along the way, marketing, all that kind of. So it is a lot of work, but we love it.
It
Yeah.
is fun most days.
You wouldn't do it unless you loved it. Is
Right.
it a money-making venture as well, or is it purely voluntary and you're just doing it for the love of it?
We hope so. Otherwise, we're going to be living in a tent under a bridge.
The bottom line is because it's something we all feel is very beneficial, something that we have loved our relationship and we want to share that with others. And that's really the bottom line.
I would say it's a passion project. Certainly, we would like to make money. We've been working our butts off, but it is absolutely a passion project
Yeah.
that we believe so strongly in the benefit that we have had from knowing each other that we want that for others.
Yeah, no, that's great. And in terms of what the conferences look like, what could somebody that attends the conference expect?
Jeanie?
Okay, I'll take it. So we've designed the actual talks throughout the day from about 9 to 4. We've asked the speakers to speak not as much on how-tos, but more inspirational and story-based, so that anybody of any level of photography will get something out of it. So a beginner will just be inspired by all the possibilities they see. Someone who's more advanced might be inspired by a certain type of photography that someone's doing. And then the area that we're in, Estes Park, Colorado, is right next to Rocky Mountain National Park, which is just beautiful in the winter. And there's lots of opportunities for photography before and after the conference, both mornings and evenings. And then should someone stay to choose to stay longer, they could also go into the park. We have lots of different areas identified. We don't have any workshops per se out in the field,
I was
but
going
we
to
certainly,
ask that.
but we are certainly,
Photo walks and
yeah,
photo
we're
walks and
encouraging people
guides.
to, we'll be organizing photo walks and that sort of thing, and places that people can go to get people out. And the first night will be a meet and greet kind of thing where we'll just have a dinner and it'll be a chance for everybody to meet one another.
Yeah, awesome.
One more thing that people are going to get out of it, which is I think it's super valuable, is that we have asked our speakers to stay throughout like the conference. So the attendees will have access to these speakers and ask them questions or get some sort of like mentorship, or so that they'll have access to these amazing photographers throughout the conference. So that in itself is super valuable. So while they're not going to be how to, except for the last day, it's going to show how speakers are they successful and they manage to learn despite of different things or blocks or whatever, and how they see the world and how do they photograph and why they do it. So it's going to be, they're going to get a lot out of this conference.
And we chose these speakers partly because they are all very approachable, very open, and it's really a safe place. So if a brand new person, it's kind of intimidating using all your camera equipment and where do you go and how do you learn and what do you do? So a beginning person can go to this conference and they can sit right next to one of our photographers, Jen Walton, and say, how did you do it? How did you get into it? How did you start? And our speakers are very open. They're looking for that type of conversation to have with these other women. And so it's very open, very safe place to go. Plus, and when I call them resources. And what I mean by that is when we learn photography and landscape photography as Grant, there's no like path. This is how you do it.
Yeah.
It's different for every type of person, and we just reach whatever thing we can. Maybe this is what will help, and maybe this. And some people are more visual, and some people are hands-on. And so this will allow other photographers to actually meet these amazing photographers and say, hey, oh gosh, I love this thing that Victoria Hawk has going on. I would love to be a part of that workshop, or I would like to reach out to Michelle Sons and get some of her mentorship. She has mentorship programs.
Yeah.
And they're varying different levels. So maybe somebody's not quite as much of a beginner as they are building a portfolio, and they can have Michelle review their portfolio for them. Or so it's really
Awesome.
to help find those other photographers that you really might enjoy or connect with through conversation and through sitting next to them that can help you in the future as things come up.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a massive value add for the attendees. The conversations that I've had one-on-one through the podcast, but also other events that I've attended with photographers have been invaluable to me. And I know in talking to either clients of mine or people that are wanting to learn photography that I've spoken to, having access to somebody makes a massive difference to being able to ask the questions that you really want. As you say, it can go way beyond just the how did you do that?
Yeah, you're exposed to so much, and you will have all this knowledge available to you.
Yeah, it's
So,
immeasurable.
yeah. So for people that want to attend, are there spaces still available? Are they able to get into the conference? When is it? What date, etc.?
Shanda.
Anyone. It's in February, the 6th through the 9th of 2025. It's in
Yep.
Estes Park, Colorado. And it's our website is theoutdoorphotoalliance.com. It's really easy to find if you Google it. So when you Google Outdoor Photo Alliance, you'll find our website and you'll find our social medias. It has a lot of information on the conference just right there. Our venue is really incredible. It has fireplaces that you can warm up afterwards. One of my favorite things after winter photography is warming up by a fireplace. So
Nice.
it's got some wonderful amenities. So it's a great place to stay. But a lot of information. It has the topics that the speakers are going to speak about. And somebody can subscribe and get a $100 off discount off of the ticket purchase. And what else? Did I hit everything?
We still have tickets available.
Yeah, we do
The
have tickets
discount
available.
code expires December 31st. After that, it's full price.
Yep.
We do have a lot of sponsors that have donated an immense amount of really good stuff, not just like cheapo stuff, but we have tripods, we have inserts for camera bags, we have clips. So we have a lot of giveaways.
Maven filters and prints, and oh yeah, it's awesome.
We've had a lot of support from the industry, and we really appreciate that.
Yeah, that always makes a big difference too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to speak to each of you a little bit more about your own individual journeys and where you've come from and how, I guess, other photographers have inspired you. I guess I've got a bunch of questions that I'd love to ask, and if you don't mind, we'll just ask the question and then go 1, 2, 3. I don't know which order you want to go in,
Okay.
but we can just go from there. What motivates you creatively?
trying to think narrowly. There's so many things that motivate me creativity. Like, where do you start? Which one do you, that's a big question. Yeah, I love being outdoors. And that kind of drives everything else in a way. I've been deployed to many different places that were not so beautiful. And
Hmm.
growing up in Colorado in the mountains, that's what I love. It's part of my soul. And so for me, when I was in Afghanistan or Qatar or Kuwait, wherever it was just getting out to see the sunset or the sunrise or the celestial mountains in Kyrgyzstan. Just no matter where you are, it's getting outdoors to catch that breath of air. And then somehow the creativity comes from there.
Yeah, sure.
I think for me, is I think it's capturing the essence of a place. So there's a lot of places that are over photographed, but if you can get to know a place and trying to create something that's different or trying to show this place in a different light, or if it's local place, you go off often and you get to know the place. So then you start noticing the little nuance, the light, how it changes and how it affects how this place looks, or like the different seasons. So I think that's a big motivation, and it's like creating challenges to create something beautiful. I guess in my mind, that is going to show how this place changes, and
Yeah,
you
sure.
know how you connected to these places that you're photographing.
I think for me, Martha already mentioned the having a connection with the place. That's really important for me, and I try to think about how do I capture the feeling that I'm having at the moment that I'm taking a photo.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that and that hasn't always been true. I certainly didn't start out that way, but I definitely find now that trying to capture a feeling is more of the challenge than capturing the thing that I'm photographing. And that offers a lot of creative possibilities there. And
Yeah,
whether that's technique or whether that happens in camera or whether that happens in post-processing, that's that is all open for my creative exploration.
yeah, great, great.
Yeah.
Are you a planner or are you more reactive?
I
I
am
am.
responsive. I'm
I'm
not very good at
intuitive.
Responsive is
planning.
probably a better word.
Yeah, I I kind of say, oh, pretty, yay, photo. But yeah, I'm not very good at planning. I try to, but it doesn't work that way.
Sure.
I would say I'm both. I I'm definitely more responsive for the most part. The only time I plan is when I'm doing night photography.
Mm,
And I definitely plan on that. If I'm doing Milky Way, I like to know where the Milky Way is going to be. It's a thing of mine that I like. I'm not going to say I captured all in one because oftentimes I'm doing a blue hour blend or something like that.
sure.
Or if I'm using a star tracker, I have to do a different image for the foreground. But I need to know that the image that I created was possible.
Yeah.
It actually happened the way it looks. There was one time I was doing a pano. Oh my gosh. I was doing a pano and it had a lake, and then I did another pano with the sky. And I was stacking the images to reduce noise. And by the time I had gotten across the sky, there had been the lake, half of it had wind blown. So then I had to go back and redo the lake. And by then, the reflections of the stars weren't lining up. So I literally moved the reflections in the lake because I was like, I can't move these planets because this is how they were aligned.
Okay.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm a little technical that way,
Fair-
but when I'm just out during the day, not at all technical like that.
Yeah, yeah,
I would say I'm a little bit of both. I use my intuition a lot of the time. So just what draws me, and it's where you could say my lens goes to what I love, intuitive in that sense. But then now I have a few projects going on. I started one just before school, but as I'm in class, I have 3 classes, and each one of these classes I have a project. And so I have to be very specific.
yeah,
In one class, it's a lovely dead and dormant things. It's taking plants that are dead and dormant and showing them in a beautiful way. And so
Right.
I have to decide when I'm going to go out. Maybe it's after a frosty morning, so I have to pay attention to the weather. If I've already gotten some warm toned images, I want to go and try to find some cool toned images. And of course, the backgrounds and things change depending on the light. Of course, we all know that. But so the projects help push me to that specific planning sense.
Yeah. Okay. While we're talking about learning, where did each of you learn your photography?
Here I can go. I took a class back in college, so that was like a really long time ago, where I learned to develop film, but it's been mainly just learn as you go thing. So when I
Sure.
started shooting, I had just like a 7100 Nikon, so it wasn't even like a full frame camera. After I started getting into it, and then I learned how to shoot manual, then things got more interesting.
Mm.
And then along the way, I've managed to have mentors, and usually they help with post processing, which is like the harder thing for me. So I've had a couple mentors where they bring up something that you hadn't really thought about. So then you start thinking about that. Oh, so when you're shooting, you have like a million voices in your head. Do this, don't do that, do this. And yeah. But it's been like just learn as you go.
I'm also self-taught. I actually learned Photoshop before I really got into photography. Back in the early 2000s, I was doing photo restoration, so scanning old
Okay.
photos and
Yep.
repairing them. And I learned a lot about Photoshop there. And I enjoyed photography at the time, but I wouldn't call myself serious about it. So when I picked photography back up in 2016, I already had the post-processing knowledge. And
Yeah.
certainly I've learned that as I've gone. My mom was a photographer, amateur photographer, and so I would go out a lot with her and she would share tips with me. And the rest of it's been self-taught through YouTube and buying a lot of different tutorials from photographers that I respect and enjoy their work.
Yeah. Awesome.
Oh,
Awesome.
I was in Clovis, New Mexico at the time,
Mhm.
and I took this class, and it was the basic digital photography class, but it talked about the pillars of light and how to use your camera in manual mode. And from there, I just played. I had to deploy and then move several times, so I couldn't stick with that learning process.
Yeah.
So I played with it, and I discovered long exposure really quickly doing photographs at night of the city and moving cars and lights. And I loved it. And so that was instantly probably it was my first love and still is my first love. And I just played. I took the camera everywhere I went with me. I played and tried and failed and tried. And it wasn't until I took one course, trying to remember what it's called, Offbeat, that Paul Ziska, Dave Brocha, and Victoria Hawk had put together some years ago. And then I took a few workshops. I went to, I went on a workshop with Kath Samard and Tyler Leckie
Yep.
in Argentina and
Wow.
absolutely loved it. That was really a game changer. And it was just even little things. When Tyler said, Tyler actually had the same camera, and he said, "Oh, did you know?" And I had just bought my Nikon's Z7 mirrorless. And
Yep.
he said, "Oh, did you know you could do this?" And "Oh, did you know it did this?" And it was simple things, but just to have him go, "Oh, did you know this?" And did you know that was really helpful. And then I did a couple more here locally that were a little bit more in depth. And then beyond that, it was YouTube and just researching some things that I would like to do. And then books. I love books. I love printed matter. And so I have a whole bunch of books that I've invested in and read most of them.
I've got quite a few hundred books that
You might have a
waiting
few,
to
huh?
yeah.
but like what
Everything
Shanda was
behind me's been read. I've got a pile in another cabinet. That's my to read cabinet.
wow.
You
That's pretty
read.
impressive.
It is.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of time to do it.
That's good. So you're a wealth of knowledge.
Oh, I don't know about that.
But you know what? How Shanda was saying that she was with Tyler Lickey, and then he showed her how you can do this with your camera. That's one of the things that we were saying with speakers at the conference. They can just
Sure.
get it's like that. It's
Yeah,
so good.
it makes a massive difference. Yeah. I'm interested in whether or not people feel that they're trying to tell stories with their images. What are you trying to communicate with your work? What is it that you're trying to tell people?
I think for me, I'm not really thinking about a story in a single image per se,
Sure.
but I am starting to think about how do I tell a story with a series of images. And some of that is because of the work that I do for the county that I live in, taking pictures like if they have a particular project that they're working on, how can I take pictures that tell the story of that project, whether
Yeah.
it's trail building or removing a fence line on a new property or disadvantaged population going out on a hike in the wilderness when they don't normally do that. Telling the story of that is I really enjoy, and I do that through having multiple photos, usually between 6 and 10,
Yeah.
um, is what the county asked for. But I've started to think like that then in my own work as well.
I was gonna say, yeah, I think that's where you see the value of projects. For me, it's not always. Sometimes there are stories to tell. Sometimes it's just like the aesthetics of the place pull you in and you photograph it regardless, just because you want to save that memory or that image.
Mm.
But there's definitely times where there's a story or a story develops while you're taking a photo,
Hmm.
and then that's when you combine the two. Like I was thinking of when we were in New Mexico and I was going through some personal stuff and we were photographing a storm, and immediately that I connected my inner feelings to what was happening around me. So it might
Mhm.
not tell a story for anybody else, but it was telling the story of how I was struggling with whatever was going on at the time. But yeah, so there's not always a story, but yeah, like the projects help tell a story of a place or like the essence of a place where you capture like the small things, the big things, and then you can give somebody the grander picture of the place. And also, I think sometimes it's motivated by what do you call this? Just trying to protect the place. Conservation. I was
Mhm.
blanking out.
I find that a lot of my photography in the past, when we consider what we're conveying, I haven't had the viewer in mind. A lot
Okay.
of my photography has just simply been because I love it. Like this photo, this image back here, I love it. I don't care who saw it or who's seeing it or who likes it or who doesn't. It's just simply personal pleasure. For me, it resembles something, a place that, like Martha was talking about, a mood or a place or a memory or some point that I was at in life. And I realized that a lot of my photography is like that.
Yeah.
It's because I love it and it's for me. But yeah, at other times, you think about moods and expressions. For me, when I see photographs that I connect with, it's more because I feel an emotion or a mood more than a narrative
Hmm.
or a story.
Sure.
So I think they're more mood and emotion than narration
Mm.
overall. Not that's not a definitive answer, but Jeannie was talking about one image might be an idea, but a whole series is a concept. And so sometimes you put one together or you see a whole bunch. If you look at a book, somebody that puts a book together, their whole book might have a narration or
Yeah.
a story, but the images have moods and feelings.
Yeah.
But
I resonate with that because most of my work is about feeling, whether or not I'm trying to convey that feeling to somebody else or if it's just trying to capture the feeling that I had when I was there. It really
mhm,
is about the feeling more than trying to tell a story necessarily. That said, as you said, projects give you greater scope to weave a narrative
Hmm.
around the work that
mhm,
you've done within that theme.
But
mhm,
don't you find that when you are trying to convey a feeling or when you're connected to whatever you're photographing, it somehow, even though you don't spell it out, it kind of resonates more with the viewer because you have the connection with that image
Oh,
or that.
absolutely. Yes,
So
absolutely.
somehow, even if you don't spell it out, it kind of with your viewer and they're able to feel that image more to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if they have a different feeling, if they
Yeah.
get a different feeling from it, but the fact that you put feeling into it means that
mhm,
it transmits through the image, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
mhm. It feels more genuine rather than just an image. Like You can feel like that's a genuine image that was created with emotion.
Yeah, yeah. Where do you sit in terms of intentional photography? And by that, actually going out from the point of saying, okay, I'm going to go out today, I'm going to take some photos, I'm going to look for things that interest me, and they may be things that you're just responding to in the moment. But in terms of that intent to convey a particular emotion because you're feeling that at the time that you're
Mm.
going out and taking the image. Where do you sit with that sort of concept?
I think I can answer. For me, when I was starting out, it was more driven that way. Now I think I've learned that I will go out with my camera, whether I capture something or not. It doesn't
Mhm.
really matter, just because I think we all love being outdoors. So just the fact
Sure.
that you're outside enjoying nature or being around, it's enough. But when I started, it was more like I gotta go and photograph, and then you put pressure on yourself to create something where it's not necessarily, it doesn't always happen just because you're not in charge of how the weather is or how the light is or
Yeah.
so.
I think having an expectation can be complicated. And we all went to Death Valley and Lone Pine, and then I went on to Big Sur earlier this year, us girls and a few of our other girls. And I'm in the middle of Death Valley in Mesquite Sand Dunes, and I just had this weight that I put on myself, this expectation to deliver. And it
Mm.
wasn't because I had a client or a customer or I had anybody expecting anything at all from me, except for we were just there to photograph and have a good time. But I had this weird expectation that I had to come up with something. I
Yeah.
had to, and it had to be brilliant, and it was the weirdest thing. I'd never been there before. I have not been there since. And it carried over from there just a little bit into Lone Pine, and it was finally in Big Sur when I let it go. But it just this weird pressure. So this
Mm.
going into I have to take pictures, or I have to make something, have to create something, just didn't work. And at one point in time, we were all out photographing. It was beautiful. We were over Manly Lake, and the valley was just incredible, and the light was here and there, and it was just this amazing, and the wind was whipping. It was just this incredible scene, and I just had to sit down for a minute and go and just take it in to try to help get rid of that pressure and that expectation, and that we're going out to shoot, and so we have to deliver something to ourselves. I think putting that pressure on ourselves to go create something can be, for me, it was at one point in time complicated.
I
So,
think definitely the weight of your own expectations is way more, or it tends to be a lot more for me anyway, than any
Mhm.
kind of client pressure or
mm.
external
Mhm.
pressure. The pressure you put on yourself is much greater than anyone else can put on you.
Yeah, I don't
I
like
would
it.
say that I would
Neither
say
do I.
I'm rarely that intentional. I'm trying to think if I was when I first started, I probably was thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to go out and photograph.
Hmm.
And now I tend to go, I'm out for a hike or out for a walk, and I just wait to see what catches my eye, what
Yeah,
interests me. And sometimes I can make a photo of that, and sometimes it's not possible to. And I can just be thankful then, okay, that was a cool experience. And it doesn't matter that I didn't get a photo of it.
yeah,
So,
So much more enjoyable, isn't it, Jeanie?
so much more enjoyable.
I find that there's times where I've gone out to do this or do that, or my husband and I went hiking in this kind of nondescript area, and of course had camera in hand, and some kind of light or something just said, "Boo, here you go, photograph me." And it ended up being, really fantastic. It was completely a surprise or completely unexpected. And those have been some of my absolute favorite as well.
yeah, yeah,
Or when you're about and you don't have your camera and there's like amazing line, you're like, I just gotta enjoy it because that's
Yep.
it. But I was gonna say you also, I think it's different when you are, say, if you're leading a workship, because then
oh, definitely. Yeah,
you have your clients and they're like, you want them to have the best opportunities to photograph,
Mhm.
and then it's not like you can control the weather, but then that's like an additional pressure. You're not worried about yourself, but you want them to walk out with something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that surprises me the most in terms of that pressure is over time, I've learnt to let go of a lot of it. I was talking to Kenneth LaRose. I'm not sure if any of you know him, but he's a photographer in the Pacific Northwest, and he, aside from doing some fantastic work, but he goes out and regardless of what happens, he doesn't feel any kind of sense of failure or any kind of feeling that he hasn't achieved something. And the reason he's doing that is because he's going out without expectations and going out without that added pressure on himself. And the way that he's actually doing that up front in terms of what he's thinking about before he goes out to take photos is to really just consider, okay, I'm going out, whatever happens. And if I make a good photo, then great. If I make bad photos, then I might have learned something.
That's the best kind of
Absolutely.
attitude.
Grant, do you feel as though your own personality, your own inner nuances or idiosyncrasies, the things that make you, are visible in some or all of your work?
Definitely some of my work. It's stuff I like the look of, which is why I've pointed nobody else likes it. That's fine. I've kind of let go of a lot of the pressure from social media and say, if a photo, I've recently just got back from a trip to Broken Hill, which is probably a fairly remote part of the state that I'm in, New South Wales. It's far western New South Wales, and basically as far west as you can go before crossing the border into South Australia. It's desert, but its landscapes are not what you typically think. It's not sand dunes, though there are sand dunes. It's not cacti or anything like that. There's flat plains in places, there's hills in places. It's a very varied landscape, and it was something that I commented to my wife on the way there was over every rise that you went on the road, you came into a kind of microclimate and micro ecosystem. Each rise that you went over gave you something different. And to me, that is really interesting, and seeing the world in that way. Each little part that you go to has these little nuances that are very different, is something that I've tried to express. Have those images gone mad on social media? No, I don't care. That's not what it's about. It's about, did I find something that interested me? I spent hours looking around dead trees in lakes and photos of that, and I've popped a bunch of those up. They're some of my favourite ones, but I also spent hours scrambling around on in and around the hills around Broken Hill and looking for little things, finding quartz reefs that are exposed out of the top of the hill, for example, at sunrise, and the way the light played on that. It was just amazing. And whether or not anyone likes it, I don't care.
You lit up there talking about it, so it's obviously something you
Exactly.
enjoy.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that in terms of what I'm trying to express, these are the things that I've gone out at silly o'clock to look at the sun come up. And sometimes I point the camera the opposite direction because that's more interesting. That's the thing that I'm trying to convey is, and I hope that sort of comes out in my work. And I'm interested if that's how you also feel about your own work as well.
I would say for me, for sure, yes. I was on a workshop once in Moab, the Moab, Utah area in Canyonlands, and we went out for a sunrise shoot, and the light was just doing nothing for me. It was really hazy, and I'm like, and I did exactly what you just said. I turned around and I took pictures of really interesting sandstone formations, or just lines in the rock. That's what
I love
fascinated
a
me
rock.
that morning. Yeah,
I
exactly.
love rocks.
Just leave me with this rock. I'll be here for an hour.
Do you find like something that people have gotten asked, oh, is there like an animal? Or something? I'm like, no, I'm just photographing this plant. They're like, oh, okay, but this is what I like.
It's not
But
for everyone. That's it.
yeah. And again, like you said, I don't care. This is what I like. But yeah, I think when you start probably, and when I think it's the doings of social media, you get sucked into this kind of like a black hole, because when I started, I was posting whatever and it was like pretty bad. But then you start getting attention, and then when your photography improves, then you capture the attention of the people that you admire. So you're like, oh, I'm doing something right. So then you start trying to go more for that. And then we all know we have a love-hate relationship with social media. Then you plummet as, what am I doing? I'm not doing right. So once you let go of that and then you start photographing, like you said, like things that you like, then you don't really care
Yeah, yeah.
if people like it or not.
Yeah, so I interviewed Hans Strand a few months ago, for example, and doing that was amazing. He's an amazing photographer, one that I've looked up to for a long time.
Mhm.
One like and a comment from him on one of my images is worth more than a million likes from just who's passing and scrolling and
Interesting.
whatever. You're quite right. That validation by somebody that you admire and somebody that you are looking up to in the industry is definitely worth way more than just the general scrollers that
In
might.
general, yeah. Yeah, I've done a little test before where like I did a photo and then just the way I edited and posted. And then I did the same photo where I just went crazy with the sliders and the color. And then
Oversaturated.
yeah, and then I asked
I know
people
which
like,
one worked.
yeah, I was like, yeah, exactly. For some reason, the general public love that ugly photo with this crazy colors. So
Yeah,
it's like you can't do it. So yeah, once you start getting the attention of the people that you admire, then you're like, oh my God, I'm doing something right. And that's kind of like a feeling. But even then, I still photograph whatever I like.
yeah, yeah.
I discovered doing art fairs, and I didn't realize this at first. The first time you do an art fair or a show or exhibit or something, you have no idea what
Yeah.
to put out there. What are people going to like? I like this, I like this, I like that. Maybe they'll like this, maybe like you just have no idea. And it's my third year now. And the stuff that sells that the general public here, we're a tourist area. People, it's
Sure,
very
sure.
beautiful here. They love the iconic shots. They love those ones they connect with, they see, that's what sells. I'll put out some of my more artistic things that I love, and those don't necessarily sell. Every
Yeah,
now and then they'll sell. And what's interesting is this last show, for example, these two older gals, I would say 60s age, they collected a couple of prints and a couple of cards that had more abstract work and a little bit more expressive. And they brought those up to me and I said, do you have an artistic background? And they said, oh yeah, we're painters, we're blah, 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 blah. So the people that connect with that sort of imagery are people that are more artistic or have an artistic background,
yeah.
whereas the general public, non-photographers, they connect with that iconic stuff that they're used to seeing. So I think that taught me to really understand the difference between those two. And so then when I go somewhere or I approach something, I know a little bit more, okay, we're going to go with this or we're going to go with this. But it took me a couple years to figure that out. And same thing, like we were just talking about in social media, those iconic images might get a bunch of likes, but it's one or two or three of those other ones that are really unique and mean something to you, that when they get that one comment, it's, yeah, or that one person, that artistic person who really loves it, that means a lot.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I'm interested in the nexus between where people live and how they shoot. It obviously impacts what they shoot because
Mhm.
live is what you've got is what you've got. I'm interested in how where you live has actually influenced the way that you shoot, the style that you put into your images. Do you think it has at all or not? And if so, in what way?
I think it has to have almost for me, especially since I do enjoy photographing my local area, but a lot of the year it's very dry here. It's not green at all. So the grass will be green. I've got a natural area just across the way, across the road, and it'll be bright green in May and June, and then come July, it just turns brown. And now I've got a brown landscape to photograph all summer. So summer is my least favorite time to photograph because of that. But I also started doing infrared in black and white, and that makes a huge difference. So now I can make the landscape look completely magical when if I was doing it in color, it just wouldn't translate.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I would say that in that way, certainly it has affected my choice of photographing. I'm completely enamored with infrared now. I'm not giving up on color,
yep,
but it gives me another tool in my toolbox to use when conditions aren't perfect, if you will.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think I think it does affect how you photograph and how you react to the landscape that you're at. Mountain, like where we're at or where I'm at, there's like a lot of mountains and a lot of it's very photogenic, so it's pretty in a way easy to photograph all this. But if I'm faced with a woodland, it's like, how am I gonna do this? Because
Yeah.
this
How do you make sense of the chaos? Yeah,
yeah, so
Mhm.
it's learning to make sense of the chaos. But I think the same thing happened for like the first time I went to White Sands because it
Hmm.
was overwhelmingly beautiful and it's just like a blank palette there that so I was like, how do I capture these beauties? But just because I'm not used to like dunes and sands, once you kind of calm down and look around and start I like to see angles and lines and geometric shapes.
yeah,
So then you learn, okay, this is how I do it. But I think it does affect because just
Mhm.
your local place you're used to, so you see it time and again, and you can see how the light changes or whatever.
I agree. I don't really have too much else to add.
yeah.
I was just going to add to piggyback on what Martha just said. I did a trip up to Olympic National Forest a few years ago, and my first time out in the tide pools, I was
Mm,
I had my camera out, and we only had there was only going to be 2 days when the tides were out when we had the opportunity to take photos there.
Yeah.
And talk about pressure. I was putting a whole bunch of pressure on myself. Oh my gosh, I have to get a photo. I have to get a photo. And finally, I'm like, I'm not even seeing. I've never seen tide pools like this. I put the camera away. I'm like, okay, I can't. I'll have another time tomorrow. But
Sure.
right now, I just need to experience this because the tide's not out for very long and I don't even know what I'm looking at right now.
that's a good example. I actually felt that way in Big Sur earlier this year. It was incredible and beautiful and awesome. And I wanted to do long exposure, which I loved, but I just was in awe of everything and
Hmm.
the difference. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to agree, going into the desert and photographing around Broken Hill and Menindee and some of the places there. Yes, some of the techniques were similar, but I also found that my usual sort of style of longer exposures and whatever didn't necessarily work as well because you had movement of foliage and whatever. And so I had to
Hmm.
rethink a little bit about how I shot. I did a lot more handheld than I have ever done before because normally if I'm at a beach, I'm on a tripod and trying to
Hmm.
get that water movement is which is my stock in trade. But the
Hmm.
the desert is very different, and it's not that it's all standing still. The movement that's there and the way that you actually have to shoot. The light is very different there as well. I found just the quality of light. There was quite a bit of wind around as well, which meant that there was a lot of foliage movement, which is something that you don't necessarily want to capture. Yes, you can do it, and yes, I did do a bit of experimentation with that, but
Hmm.
trying to get those leaves as still as possible really was the aim for a lot of the shots that I was taking. Even though at a beach, I'd be going for a longer exposure and going for something slightly different.
Do you have a type of
Some, oh, go ahead.
environment? Oh, I was saying like Grant, do you have like a favorite type of environment that you like to photograph where you feel at ease and you can just go and do
Oh
it?
yeah, the beach every time. I'm an hour's drive from the nearest beach here in Sydney. I live in the suburbs out west of Sydney, but I've always been a beach person. Always, I used to surf years ago when I had knees that worked, and it was where I grew up at the beach. Grew up around the rock pools around Sydney, and that environment is just that's my happy place, standing knee
Yeah.
deep on a rock shelf with the waves moving around me. That's where I love to be.
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
you can get into something like that and it can feel, and you're used to using a tripod and it feels almost uncomfortable and unnatural to pull your camera off and
Yeah,
start
absolutely.
using different settings and not being on that tripod. I know when we were in White Sands, just that freedom was
Yeah.
was
If
interesting.
I'm doing wave photography where I'm upping the speed, I'm usually on a monopod for that because I've got a whack and great 400 mm lens on. So
Mm.
I don't want to stand there hand holding that for an hour and a half
Right.
Yeah.
trying to capture waves because by the end of it, I'm shaking around all over the place just with the waves.
Right.
So I'm normally on a monopod there. So even those sorts of shots are completely different to where I am normally. You mentioned one of the earlier questions was a big question. I've got probably one of the biggest questions. Where do you see photography in society?
Wow.
You mean with the AI?
As you want. Now, what do you see as photography's place in society?
I see it in two ways. I've thought a little bit about this. I see it in two ways. I see almost a split. I see people who are really going to grab onto this IA, that the NFTs, the IA. It makes some things easier. It makes marketing easier. It makes companies be able to create their own content easier, and that is going to continue to grow. But then I see this other piece coming back around to genuine photography. The AI, while it makes things easier for processes and this and that, it doesn't include the person. Whereas I think genuine photography, actual printed matter, certified images, originals, I think that's going to come back. And part of me feels like it already is, like people are already asking for that. But I'm seeing more young people with 4x5 cameras and film cameras because people are looking for the nostalgia as we're advancing and we're progressing and moving forward as a country. I think there's a lot of us, especially in the Gen Z and the millennials who want to reach back into that nostalgic record players and film cameras and actual printed material with the person who told the story and signed it. So the IA will be great. And I think it's important for us to learn about it and know it and understand it, whether we use it or not. It's up to us. But I do see the desire for actual printed matter continuing. I don't think that's ever going to go away. And it may even increase the desire for it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that what I have found, like I said, I do photography for the love of it. And what I have found is that when I share photos on social media, first of all, most of my friends, if you will, the people that follow me, I made from my previous career. And so, yes, I certainly have plenty of photographers following me, but when I'm thinking of the response that I get from people, invariably it's the people that were from my previous career. And so when they see my images, and that was a creative career, don't get me wrong, but when they see my images, I think that they see me in them
Mm-hmm.
because I can't tell you how many times someone will thank me for sharing the photo.
Yeah. Yeah.
It made my day, or I really appreciate seeing what you're up to, or and so I think that the genuineness of a photo, I feel like it's an extension of me. I put myself into it. And so I think people respond to that. And I think people are looking for connection like that. Certainly, you can look at the groups that have just tons of AI images, and there's all these people that are just saying how amazing this photo is. And I'm just sitting there rolling my eyes because I'm like, that is not reality.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
in my immediate circle, I think people really appreciate the genuineness that I put into my photos.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a classic one of those. It was actually a series of images, and it was actually in the text. If you read what they said, was there was no Photoshop, which is probably true. They just popped it out of the AI engine, and it was cloud, some particular type of cloud over Iceland,
Mhm.
and all these multicolored sort of rainbow colored clouds.
Mhm.
And yeah, I've seen effects like that in cloud with the sun coming through and you get your halo effects and so forth. But I've never seen anything like these clouds. But the hilarious thing was that the mountain that was in each of these photos, because they said these were taken over an hour, the snow was completely different on each of them.
Very
Melted
fast
really
melt, no.
Yeah, it not only quickly melted, but it came back in some of the later images.
amazing of
Uh-huh.
nature.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think that
I will,
lack of candor and honesty about
That's
it
the
is,
honesty that's the real problem,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
transparency.
Trying to present it as one thing and it's not. I think that's a challenge.
yeah, I'm very clear when I post photos. I do a lot in Photoshop. I'll remove
I'm the
distractions,
same.
I'll enhance contrast and color and all that. But I always talk about my creative process when I post it because that's part of it for me. And because most of my friends are creatives themselves, they appreciate my thought process and me sharing that. So I've been encouraged to continue doing that.
I just have like a quick answer. I don't think photography is going anywhere because,
Yeah.
like we said before, and like you said, there's always going to be that connection part where people actually identify with places and stuff. And you cannot create weddings or portraits or capture the memories in life with AI. So I don't think photography is going anywhere.
Yeah.
Plus the love of being outdoors and capturing
Mhm.
it. Like people want that. You don't want to sit at a computer and type a command and give me a photo of this. What's the fun of that?
Yeah. It holds no interest to me at whatsoever. I'm much more about getting outside and enjoying the experience. And I know I'm certainly going to do that regardless of what happens in the industry.
Yeah.
Exactly.
For sure.
I guess for stock photos, there might be a place where people are going to lose their jobs because then,
Oh,
stock photos.
definitely. Yeah. There's already
Awesome.
marketing departments that are doing fashion and doing product shots or whatever.
Commercial.
Yeah, that commercial photography is definitely at risk. I think that's probably more at the lower end though, rather than the high end. If you want a high end fashion shoot or a high end product shoot, then you're still going to have to get a photographer in because the AI is still not quite there. Maybe 5-10 years, yes, it will be able to, you'll be able to push a button and spit out your can of whatever it is or your fashion shoot without having to hire somebody. But yeah, I think you're quite right. The events and weddings and so forth, none of that's going to go anywhere from a commercial standpoint because people want them in the photo.
Yeah,
They don't
Right.
want,
capture the moment.
yeah, they don't want a weird AI thing with 8 fingers.
Annie Leibovitz, I think, and I don't exactly remember how it goes, but basically, like when you see in her photos, you see the connection between the photographer and the person that she's photographing. So when you go to our eye, you miss that, you lose that. So the photo is just gonna be like an icicle.
Yeah.
There's no.
I only got a couple more questions for you. What's the best and worst piece of advice anyone's ever given you?
I have a bad advice. This photographer gave me a long time ago, and at the time I took it seriously, and he was well intentioned. He's not alive anymore, but he had good intentions. But
Sure.
he was telling like if you want to be good at something, then you gotta focus just on that. You cannot be doing portraits and you cannot be doing this or that. Like you gotta focus on one thing. And at the time I was like, oh yeah, you gotta be good at it. You gotta, put all your attention. I like to shoot everything. So I thought that was a bad advice. I think you can still be good at different things. You just put the time into it. So I don't think. So I see that as a bad advice.
Yeah, I think everyone has a strong suit, but having multiple strings to the bow makes life a lot more interesting.
Yeah, you're more rounded.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you learn different types of ways that your camera functions, whether it's a fast shot or a extrusive time use of
What's the thing?
time.
If you spent the money on a good camera, you might as well get the most out of it by using more of the functions than just the one or two that you might focus on with one particular genre of photography.
Especially if you're teaching. If you're teaching photography, you might have a client or a customer that says, "Hey, but what about this?" or "But what about this?" And it just
Yeah,
helps you be
exactly.
able to
Yeah.
help them from various different directions or angles.
So what about your good or bad advice, Shanda?
I haven't really had much advice. Just one way in the beginning was that to pick an aesthetic and stick with it so that you're identifiable. So you're an individual and it shows. And so when somebody sees XYZ image, they're like, oh, that's a Shanda Akin photo. And I really thought about that once, and people said, look at this is an example of an Instagram page, and this is an example, and this is an example. So when you see this, what's that person? And it just didn't sit right.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel like, not only that, it's completely not me. So it didn't last too long, but it lingered for a little bit. Me pondering, is that really a thing? Is that really what we have to do? Aside from the genre thing that Martha just mentioned, I heard that as well. Pick one and stick to it. And so on my Instagram personally, you don't see all my trains. I love photographing trains at night and planes and a variety of different things, but you don't see those on my Instagram because it made me wonder, what if you throw in a plane, or what if you throw in this or that into your mix? And
Throw everything in there, whether it's black and white,
yeah.
planes, trains,
Mhm.
or wheels, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not on my own social media very often, so there's that, but yeah, it took a minute to go, nope, that doesn't sound right, and it's not for me, and it doesn't fit. But I know people do it
I like the
purposely.
Wolf gave me in one of my interviews a few weeks ago, which was don't have a style.
Hmm.
It's
He
so
doesn't believe
hard.
he has a style.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's so hard to pick
Yeah.
a style because like how do you pick it? I remember hearing that too, like what Shanda said. I was like, how do I know my style? And how do I know? It's like I can't be identified just because you can range and you're influenced by so many people that you could take a little bit of here, a little bit of there. So I think it's incredibly difficult to pick a style.
Yeah, definitely.
I would agree with that. I can't say that I had any personal advice because I am self-taught in so many ways, but certainly it's the community advice, if you will. And
Mhm.
that was one of them. The whole, when I was first starting out, it's like, oh, I need a style. And I didn't think I had one. And then I was a member of a photo challenge and we'd post photos weekly. And somebody said, oh, I knew that was yours as soon as it popped up. And I was like, how did you know? And she described, she's like, oh, you're very realistic and just the contrast that you have. I'm like, oh, I guess I have a style. But it was just me doing what I liked. It wasn't creating something. It was just me being authentic to what I liked. And
You have a
I'm trying to
style?
say that again. Oh, you had a question, didn't you?
No, I was asking Grant if he has a style of
Oh,
photography.
okay.
I think probably if anyone looked at it, it'd be that naturalistic wave photography, long exposures. They're a big part of my work. But yeah, I again don't try to make every image look a particular way. Yes, I have a workflow, but each image is edited based on that image as opposed to trying to make them all. I don't use presets except for one, which actually sets everything to zero except I think texture, clarity, and dehaze. There's a setting that I just put it to see, okay, if I set that amount of texture, clarity, and dehaze, I think it's 10, 5, and 5 or 7. I can't remember exactly because I set it years ago and I haven't played with it. And if it looks the way that I like, then I don't touch those sliders again. And then I move, most of my photography goes in, or most of my editing goes on in Photoshop as opposed to Lightroom. I do a bit in Lightroom for some images, but I don't do a lot there for many images. It's
Mhm.
really just setting things to default, play around with a couple of sliders just to get things where I want to start, and from that starting point go into whatever direction I decide I'm going to take that. One thing that I do with every image, I'll flip it upside down. The reason why I do that
Mm.
is to see, okay, does this look balanced when it's upside down? If it doesn't look balanced upside down, then I know I've got some cropping to do, or maybe I just screwed up in the first instance and no one's ever going to see that. The other thing I do is I turn black and white on just to see, okay, have I got some bizarre tonal things happening? And there's a couple of other tweaks that I do to get rid of dust spots, though sometimes I forget. But other than that, everything else is basically in the moment of looking at that image, and it's micro adjustments of curves adjustment for contrast. But other than that, not much else. A lot of my images, some people say some of my work is oversaturated. I a lot of my stuff by about 33–40%.
I was going to say about your own, what you favor. Grant, I noticed you have a bunch of waterfall photographs in
Yeah, I love the
your
waterfall.
portfolio. And to me, they have a kind of a visual unity because of the colors and the editing style that you favor. And so that is your own personality, your own nuances that come through in your photography because of what you favor and your preferences and and how you edit. So when I look at your waterfalls, they're all unique and individual enough to keep your collection varied, but they are very, there's a unity there. So
Yeah,
that's what
okay.
I would say.
I never really thought of it, to be honest.
I was looking at some of your work, and of course, I love waterfalls. I'm like, ooh, let's look at some of these waterfalls.
I don't mind a waterfall, and I'm really lucky where I live. There's I could probably drive within 2 hours. There'd be more than 150 different waterfalls that I could go and hit up.
Wow.
Wow.
So yeah,
Wow.
it's amazing. The bloom. Some of them. There's one in particular there which I got, and I deliberately, again, intentional photography for me. I deliberately went there because it was raining, and I knew that waterfall was actually flowing. Normally, you go there when it's dry and there's a trickle. It just doesn't look very impressive. The little valley that it's in is gorgeous, but the actual waterfall is just not very impressive when there's no rain. I saw the forecast; it had rained the day before, and I thought, okay, the day's rain and it's going to rain tomorrow. I'm going to head up there. So I went up there and caught it with a nice amount of water on it. Too much water, and it looks horrible as well.
Yeah.
So that, but that's a case of being intentional, but also the advantage of really knowing your area.
Oh, absolutely.
So when on my local area, fog is not common at all. And so when we get fog, I'm always going out because I can get photos that don't normally happen. Sometimes there's an inversion layer and I can hike up. I'm in a valley, so I can hike up above the clouds or the fog layer, and that's really cool. But definitely an advantage of knowing your area and knowing when you've got some special conditions.
Yeah, and that does make a massive difference. Yeah. Okay. Second last question, and I know you've got a list of people for me. Who do I need to talk to? Who do I need to have?
Who do you need to talk to? This list is coming from our speakers that are going to be at the Women's Winter Conference. Again, February 6th to the 9th, 2025. And in Estes Park, Colorado. And Charlotte Gibb, who I think is already on your list. Sherry Mabe, who is an amazing infrared photographer. Suzanne Mathia, who is an Adobe certified instructor. Christy Odom is an Nikon ambassador and is a wildlife photographer. Michelle Sons, who is one of our friends that we were in White Sands with, and she does amazing work out on the East Coast and specializes, I would say, in fog, and she has a book on that. Jennifer Walton, who is a storm chaser, and she founded Girls Who Chase. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Girls Who Chase. Dawn Wilson is another wildlife photographer, and Beth Young she's really interesting because she puts a lot of her work into healthcare facilities and believes in the power of imagery to help heal people. And I think you'd really have a fascinating conversation with her.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
And the other ones you've already had. So
yes, that is Sarah Marino, Franca Gabler, and Victoria Hack.
Yeah, I've spoken to all of them. Yeah. All right, I've got one more question, and for many people, it's a really important issue in the photography community and society at large. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
No.
yes.
I do. Yes.
Okay. That's a real mixed bag.
Love it in shish kebabs, but not pizza.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I
I'm
like
partial to it in
pineapple
a
and
hamburger.
jalapenos.
Mm,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say pineapple and pepperoni, so yeah, same idea, Martha.
The spicy Hawaiian.
Yeah, there you
Exactly.
go.
Exactly.
Or the spicy
Fantastic.
Mexican.
All right. Thank you so much for talking to me, ladies. It's been absolutely
Thank you,
wonderful
Grant.
getting to know you. I wish you well with the conference in February. I think it'll be an amazing event. And if anyone has the opportunity to get a ticket, go to the Outdoor Photo Alliance website and get yourself booked in. Where can people find the website and your own individual websites? I'll include all of these as links, obviously, in the show notes.
So the
So
conference Outdoor Photo Alliance .com is for the Outdoor Photo Alliance, obviously. My website is thedigitalgenie.com, and I'm also on Facebook.
Fantastic.
So yeah, Jeannie mentioned the website. Personal, it's Martha Montiel and it's the same for Instagram or Facebook.
Thanks, Mark.
Mine is shandaakin.com. If you just punch in my name, it'll come up. The one and only.
It's
But
nice
and
having a
Instagram
unique
and
name.
Facebook. What's that?
I said it's nice having a unique name, isn't it?
Yeah, it's easy. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank
It
you
was
so
a
much.
pleasure.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Appreciate it. It was fun.
Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com, along with prints, photography gear, and my 2025 calendar. I'm also on Vero, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Photo. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grant Swinburne. Hope to see you out shooting soon.